Welcome, everybody. We'll just start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Neil, if you lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Neil. By way of roll call, Marshall Malvo,
Neil Barker.
and Rex Mumford. Hey, welcome everyone, tonight. If you had to have your cell phones, just mute them tonight, so we don't have an interruption. Okay, we'll just jump into this. Our first item of business tonight is BOA 2024-08, consideration and action on a request for a 15-foot variance to the minimum 50-foot stream back corridor setback on the west side of the proposed building site, and a 10-foot variance to the minimum 20-foot side yard setback to the east of the proposed building site. This property is a lot of record recorded in the Forest Valley 3 zone, located at 4116 East, 4100 North, Liberty, Utah. And Tammy, you're presenting again?
I am.
We've seen this one before.
You have, hopefully this looks familiar to you all. This is a request for variance to a couple of different sets of setbacks here located in Ogden Valley. The address is 4116 East, 4100 North in Liberty on approximately 1.4 acres. This is a parcel in the Forest Valley 3 zone, and immediately adjacent is the AB3 zone. So frankly, if they were in the AB3 zone, they could likely meet their side yard setbacks, but because they're in the Forest Valley 3 zone, they're having a little bit of difficulty meeting the side yard setbacks with that stream corridor that runs through there. There is a narrative in the staff report, but I'm gonna kind of go over the updated site plan here a little bit. I know the request from the Board of Adjustment last time was to try and tuck this structure as close to the front setback, just make it fit as well as they could. They do have a 50-foot front setback, which I don't think was communicated clearly in the last meeting. Because 4100 is 80 feet or greater of a right of way, their setback is actually 50 feet. So they're pushed right up against that 50-foot setback, as you can see on their site plan. In working with engineering for the last several months, engineering has expressed a desire for them to really try and encroach in the side setbacks rather than into the stream corridor setback. So they are pushed almost 10 feet into a 20-foot side setback. However, even with that, they're still at their closest point about 15 feet into a 50-foot stream corridor setback. I want to point out the septic system, which is within the front setback. So even if they were to relocate this, which I'm not aware that they're able to, they still can't push this closer in their front yard setback. So as you can see, compared to the last time, they pulled that bump out of their plans to make it a little bit easier to not be too close to that side lot line, but that is the request before you. Considerations for a variance. These should always be the exception and not the rule. Things to consider would be whether or not the conditions tied to this property are self-imposed. In this case, we've got a stream corridor setback that cuts right through some prime buildable area for the applicant, making it difficult to construct a single-story ADA compliant home on this particular piece in an area that makes the most sense. Do you have any questions for me right now?
I'm just curious, what is the county engineer, how does he feel about this? Does he have any concerns? I'm sure he's looked at how close that is to the stream. What are the thoughts?
Gary's here, he can speak to any engineering concerns you might have.
I was hoping Gary was gonna be here tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, board. How's everybody tonight?
Thanks.
Hey, so I am very familiar with this particular property. Even down to a few years ago, I was out there New Year's Eve of 2022 when we started to see high water events within this channel. Believe it or not, the county has worked with the residents across the road to the south recently, including this summer. the family's name is the Boswells. Nate and Angie Boswell, they own the property to the south that this channel feeds into. Historically, there's always been a challenge with this particular channel where the water would pass underneath to the south, under 4100 north. And then due to the way that their property was graded and used, the water actually had to jump about an 18-inch elevation climb before it could flow through the established channel at that point. When we witnessed this start happening a few years ago, we started working with Nate and Angie and trying to come to a compromise of what we could do to address this issue. That has since been addressed and constructed and finished all this summer, this winter through the Boswell's property, where we graded that channel down to the proper grade where there is no elevation climb for this water channel. So a couple things. Number one, Neil, I appreciate your comment. When we witnessed this flooding a couple of years ago, believe it or not, the way the property sits, none of that water was backed up to the area where the applicant is proposing to put his house back then. And that was prior to the adjustments to the downstream channel. Now that we've corrected that and made it so that it's a positive slope with no elevation jumps like that, all the way down to essentially where it ties into the North Fork drainage, I'm very confident in the ability for the changes the applicant has made to accommodate the flows. I'm never gonna give anything a perfect guarantee. As you guys are aware, Mother Nature can throw curveballs at us if and when and however she wants to. However, I'm pretty comfortable in the changes and accommodations the applicant has made for this.
So the changes that the county has made there on that, that did not change, or did it change the high water mark?
No, we didn't go through and do any revisions to the FEMA floodplains. So the high water mark has always been the same. And what happened though is we eliminated obstacles downstream that kind of caused the historic high water mark, to be honest with you. I would be surprised if that high water mark is ever really observed in the same level it used to be now that those obstacles have been removed. Does that make sense?
So let me ask you, and maybe this was before, in the narrative background, it says that the county engineer recommended several things, including locating the home right to the front of the setback, the 50-foot line, which they appear to have done.
Yep.
Or close to it, I think it's 51.5 feet.
Yeah.
To avoid additional encroachment into the stream setback, a front-facing garage was recommended. And then also the latest, I think there was also some I just made a note here, retaining walls and fill.
Correct.
So as I look at this, the front-facing garage did not happen on this latest revision.
Show that.
It's still a side garage, and in fact, if you read the county ordinance, which is, Tammy, I don't have that number right under me, but it's like, if I can find it quickly, maybe in the applicant's narrative even. I was just looking at it. I think it's 104-28-2. Under item C, it even says structures, accessory buildings, roads, or parking areas shall not be developed within the 50 foot. So even though, I mean, your recommendation was very valid in terms of if that driveway was straight in, as it is on this revision, that driveway is encroaching, it appears to be probably 25 feet into the 50-foot zone. So although the home is not, the driveway is within that code area. So you made a recommendation, Gary, to the applicant of a front-facing garage to avoid the drive, and fill and retaining walls. I couldn't see if there was any retaining walls put into the proposal. Are the retaining walls still necessary in your mind?
Well, I felt that they were, hopefully you can hear me okay.
Sure.
What the retaining walls do is help accomplish the fact that they're elevating all the finished floor elevations higher to offset the encroachment into that high water mark. reality of it is, part of that high water mark, we worry in case there's a blockage. That blockage was, happened that New Year's Eve day I referred to, mostly because as that water passed under the road and hit that, obstruction, slowed things down and allowed the ice and snow chunks to start to develop and stack up. There is a little bit usually, comfort room into that buffer. And yes, I agree. I still would rather see it a front facing garage. I don't know if the applicant can change that or wants to at this point, but the fact that he's still probably 25, 30 feet roughly for the setback he's accomplishing. And the changes we made downstream through the property it crosses into, I felt like relieved a lot of concerns that we had.
From the engineers.
Flooding, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Marshall, do you have anything for it or? You have anything else for your?
No, I haven't heard about anything else other than just under your asking, if the issues would be, if it was a front approach driveway, they're gonna have to drive over the stage lines, or the septic system, to kill that whole area.
Yeah, with that, and I don't know if there's a way to work with their designer on their septic leach field to see if there's a way to reconfigure that area, but forgive me, my eyes are a little tough to read that. What does it say is in front of the leach field there?
Can't read that either.
Septic system by others?
Oh, that's what it is.
Is that what that is?
And I'm not sure, but from my own experience, I think, although there's a 50-foot setback, I think that leach field can actually go right up almost to the property line.
Yeah.
So it could be pretty close to the street. I think there's still a buffer there. Maybe part of the buffer is the replacement field that they now require.
Possibly.
And I'm not sure, other areas in there that may be.
Right.
And I'm not aware of the code of driving over a leach field. I've seen others, I think you can.
I believe you can as well. You're gonna see times of the year when that becomes challenging, right? Because obviously certain times it gets a little more saturated than others, but yeah. That could be a possibility as well.
All right. Anything else?
No, just thank you for your input. That's very valuable to have the expert. So it's, for us, we want to see it done right. And if somebody's been there and knows that if you feel comfortable, it kind of eases my mind.
Sure, no, absolutely, and happy to help provide insight into this at any time, so.
Appreciate it.
You're
Thanks.
welcome, absolutely.
Tammy? Did you finish or are you?
That's all
Because
I
I know
got.
Bill had a question and then we ended up with Gary coming.
My presentations are usually short and sweet.
So Tammy, I had one other question on the county's narrative. And it would be page 2 at the very top. It says page 3 and 5, exhibit B, show where a 1,050 square foot house could be located on the lot, should the Board of Adjustment grant the variance. I don't know if that's a typo or what that is, but let me give you I wish we had dimensions on this home, and maybe the homeowner will know the answer to this, and perhaps will, but I've scaled this, and this home is closer to 7,000 square feet, not 1,050. Are you aware
Yeah,
of that?
that's a typo, yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
and that's not counting the garage. So this desired home, as it's written in the narrative, on a 1.4 acre lot with the stream is 7,000 foot in my mind, plus garage.
The applicant is here and he can address any questions you have.
And I didn't know if you would address that or not.
No, those are questions I like to leave to the applicant.
All right. Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll ask the applicant to come up, and if you'll state your name again and your address where you're residing.
My name is Robert Aydelotte and I live in Eden, up in the Ogden Valley. The answer to that question is a 5,400 square foot home.
It was hard to scale that because
No,
there's not
I
really a
understand.
good scale. I had to use the 50 foot from the street out.
Yeah, so what you're looking at is it's 4,300 square feet, primary residence, and then the rest of it is mother-in-law apartment.
Okay, but the total living space is
5,400 square feet.
5,400,
Yes,
and then the garage is another 400 square foot or something.
roughly, yes.
Okay.
Yep, correct. And to answer your other question, the septic design was approved where the driveway could not go over top of the septic. That is why the driveway is pushed over and it is a side entry garage.
Okay,
So that's why you're looking at that.
so the health department was
Yes,
insistent on
yes,
that.
they're adamant that there is no driveway over the leach field.
Okay, and how about the extra space between the, the front setback? I mean, there's a space there.
It's what they required. I'm not sure why they required that, but that's what the health department required with the septic.
All right.
So I asked them if I could shift that and they said no, because of, I can't remember what their reason is.
Okay, so even if you had a front facing garage, you still,
Couldn't,
I mean,
yeah,
you'd have to really swear.
yes.
And then one other thing in your narrative that you mentioned on the side setback of 10 feet. The lot to the east is not a current building lot and it doesn't meet the current 3-acre minimum. Is that just your opinion at this point, or has the county informed that?
No, the county has said that it isn't part of it, where it's two separate parcels. The people behind the Hammonds behind it, they own it, they have a 2-acre, and then that is 1.25 acres. So together it meets the 3-acre, but by itself, it does not meet that 3-acre.
Okay.
And it is not grandfathered in, it has never been a buildable lot.
Can you clarify on your left, it appears to be a driveway, it's not on this picture that we're looking at, but it appears to be a driveway going back. Does that go back to another lot behind you?
That is the residence, that is an easement on the west part of the property, and that goes to the residence behind.
So is that an easement or is that actually owned property?
That I own that.
You own that?
Yes,
That
it's
strip
a
of
right
land.
of way to the house behind me.
So that strip of land is part of your 1.4 acres.
It's actually,
It's a
the
separate-
acreage is separate as
It
a
is
separate parcel. Where he doesn't have an issue meeting his west side setback. We didn't even feel the need to include that in his total width, if that makes sense.
Okay. And any other comments that you have?
No, I'm good.
I noticed, you did make the change from previous presentation of the jog outs
Correct,
on the
yes.
side. Were there any other changes you made that changed the square footage of this home?
No, just that was the only thing that we removed from that.
Okay. All right, any questions for?
No.
Can you
No.
restate your name and address in the mic?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, sorry, it's Robert Tesla, and I live in Eden.
Can I get your full address, please, for the record?
My full address?
For the
It's
record.
3537 Fox Drive.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think I picked up on that, but not your actual address.
No, you're good.
Okay, anything else from your perspective?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Tammy? Any final thoughts on your end?
No, the staff we don't typically give recommendations.
Right.
For these, and so we presented what we feel are likely not self-imposed hardships for this particular property owner, but again, that's up to the board to decide. So that's all we've got.
Okay. Okay, board, we can discuss this if you have discussions. I think one of the things that's always difficult is the self-imposed aspect of a desired home. You can always deal with that, but I think the applicants made an attempt certainly to look at the changes we looked at last time. And it's good that the county engineer also has alleviated some of our concerns there as well. I think from previous, Marcia, were you here last time?
I guess it was.
Good. So any discussion?
I have no further comments.
Okay, Charlie, do you have anything on behalf of the county? No. From your end? Lauren, anything? Okay, is there, so we have a consideration and action for this, is there a motion regarding this item?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept this consideration of action on a request for a 15-foot variance to the minimum 50-foot stream corridor setback on the west side of the proposed building site and a 10-foot variance to the minimum 20-foot side yard setback to the east of the proposed building site. And this is consideration BOA 2024-08.
Before we have a second on that, I want to ask, because we are encroaching with that driveway, which is specifically under the code, I feel like that motion needs to include something to the effect that it's not just a 15-foot, that we're actually granting 25 feet to allow for the driveway and 15-foot to allow for the building. Would you, Tammy, would you address that if we?
Excuse me, I think specificity regarding variances and decisions tied to those is always a good thing.
Okay. I just think where the stream corridor is very specific. And there's no question the driveway on our map here shows it's encroaching 25 feet. That if Neil will modify his motion to reflect a 25-foot variance for purposes of the driveway and 15-foot variance for structure, I think that would be more clear in the motion. You agree with that?
Chair, can I?
Yes.
Yes, I do think that would be helpful, and also you'll want to include in the motion the reasons why as it pertains to the statute that you're granting this variance. So those 5 reasons, you'll want to include those.
Okay.
So Neil, take a look at the 5 motions, or the 5 areas.
Yeah. Okay, this is gonna be a lengthy motion.
That's okay.
All right, I make a motion that we accept file number BOA 2024-08. This consideration and action on a request for a 15-foot variance to the minimum 50-foot stream corridor setback on the west side of the proposed home site, and a 25-foot variance to the minimum 50-foot stream corridor setback for the driveway, and a 10-foot variance to the minimum 20-foot side yard setback to the east of the proposed building site. As far as the criteria, whether this should be considered, literal enforcement of the ordinance would cause an unreasonable hardship for the applicant that is not necessary to carry out the general purpose of the land use code. Due to the fact that there is a stream that cuts through the center of the property, this is a designated building lot that's been approved. It requires that this house be put in a position that requires this variance, in my opinion. And I feel like it meets the standards that we have to consider to grant this variance. Is there anything else?
So it meets the 5
It meets the 5 criteria.
Okay. Lauren, is that sufficient?
That should be okay.
Okay, all right, so a motion's been made, is there a second?
Want to second the motion?
Okay, before we call for a vote, I would like the applicant to make sure we just changed your variance request. Will you come up and just address that you're good with that change? For the record.
This is Robert, and yes, I am good with that request.
So the request actually changed to allow for that driveway, and that'll be of the record.
Yes, correct.
Good, thank you, bro. Okay, motion's been made, it's been seconded by Marshall. Well, we'll just do a vote. Neil? Aye. Marshall? Aye. Chair will vote aye. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, our next item of business tonight is BOA dash or 2024-09, request for consideration and action on an appeal of a conditional use permit determination made 11/19/2024. And before we do that, Lauren, if you'll just review where we have newer board members, maybe just the criteria on an appeal, because it is different than our normal discussions.
Yes, so in this situation, you're acting as a quasi judicial authority. And because of that, you have the ability to vote to go into a closed session. And that does require a 2/3 majority vote. And I would recommend that you do that after hearing from the parties. You'll be looking at the correctness of the legal issues that are presented. So that's the standard there, correctness for legal issues. You'll also be looking, as far as facts go, at the substantial evidence that the facts are what they say they are. To that same point, you are not allowed to consider any facts that are outside of the record. You can allow for public comment as a part of this. However, I would advise against it only because it could lead to bringing in those facts that are not from the record, and those would be arbitrary and capricious, and it could jeopardize the appeal itself. Let's see. I think we'll need a vote of all three of you will have to vote in favor for this to pass. But I will say this, so because this is an appeal, you will not reach a decision at the end of the day, or at the end of this. You will issue a written decision, so we will take everything under advisement today, and then we will be issuing a written decision later on. Do you have any questions for me?
Okay, I don't.
I'm sure I will, but not at the moment.
Sure.
So the process on this one is we will have Tammy present on behalf of the county, and then allow the applicant to address the board, and then at that point, we'll consider adjourning to deliberate. Okay, Tammy?
Okay, so the applicant for this appeal filed a conditional use permit application. It went before the Ogden Valley Planning Commission. Planning Commission approved some components of their conditional use permit request, but not all of them. So the applicant is appealing their decision that denied specifically a glamping cabin use on site. I'm not sure how much else you want me to give you, because I don't want to present any.
I read the notes from the
Okay.
planning commission, but did the county, I mean, it's the county that made the decision, not the planning commission,
No,
isn't it?
the planning commission is the land use authority for
Okay.
conditional uses.
Okay, so it was the planning commission that. I want to look at this, Tammy, before,
Yeah,
because I read their motion, which they had several motions and it went back and forth.
mhm.
Ultimately, Commissioner Sherman, at the very end of the notes, Commissioner Schuman moved to approve CP 22/2307 conditional use permit for the agritourism operation based on, and it was a 7-0 vote. So I'm wondering what part, I mean, I know from the narrative, I read that it's the glamping aspect of this that was an issue because of the setbacks.
Correct.
Is that what the planning commission found as well then?
Yes, so Commissioner Schuman moved to approve the application with the conditions and findings stated in the staff report. And if you go to the staff report that was attached, there are two conditions. that the proposed glamping cabin not be approved because it couldn't meet setbacks. That was,
And I think the setbacks were 300 feet to the actual tourism part of the business and 500 feet to the adjacent dwellings, which could be reduced in half if there was a berm or a barrier so you couldn't see the glamping.
correct.
In this particular case, there's already a building there, as I understand. Is that building the proposed?
The structure that's there was put up with, it was not permitted through Weaver County when it was put up. So the applicant came in after.
After the fact, so that building's not really part of the, or was that part of the plan for the glamping?
Yes, that is the proposed site for the glamping.
Okay. And proposed building, even though it wasn't an approved building at the time.
Right.
And is there a berm around that building or anything to reduce these setbacks from 300 and 500 feet?
I'm not aware that there is one. We did a site visit right before this was presented to the Ogden Valley Planning Commission, and there wasn't one at the time. So I'm assuming there still isn't one in the old.
All right. Any questions for Tammy regarding this thing?
Yes, so this building, as I read through it, if it was called, instead of glamping, if it was called an accessory dwelling unit, would it be approved? Because it meets these setback standards.
In Ogden Valley, the stipulation to be able to have an accessory dwelling unit is you have to have twice the minimum acreage for the zone. Mr. Fuller is in a 3-acre zone and he has just over 4 acres. So he doesn't meet the acreage requirement in order to call that an ADU, nor does it meet any of the minimum size requirements to be an ADU.
But this does say that a market garden is 3 to less than 5 acres, but you're saying that it's needs to be double that to be an accessory dwelling unit?
For an accessory dwelling unit, yes, because Ogden Valley's general plan caps their density. They don't want to just increase density, and an accessory dwelling unit is still, it's a residence, it's another residence.
And Tammy also explained this, there was a change December of 23, the ordinance was amended from what to what?
Charlie can probably speak more to this because I think he was more involved with the ordinance change, but the agritourism ordinance was amended that year because we were getting a lot of applications that were didn't necessarily meet the intent of the ordinance, I guess, the intent of the agritourism ordinance. And so we made some changes to kind of tighten that up to make sure that what we were getting were really truly gonna be applications geared towards agritourism. And there were a table of uses in this, in Mr. Fuller's case, what are listed are the uses that were permitted under the previous ordinance and the ones that he was proposing. So he was only proposing the 3 uses. They met the previous ordinance. This was a little bit tricky to navigate because he had applied under the previous ordinance, and by the time the planning commission heard it a second time, because I think it was tabled until he had additional water, the ordinance had changed. So we had to kind of go back and remind them of what that previous ordinance was. But his application is grandfathered under that previous ordinance.
Chair, you will be able to consider any reason why the ordinance was changed. It's not on the record.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren.
Now, it's kind of tough to tell where that building is on this picture. If it was moved, is there a spot on the property where it would be okay to have that and it would be legal for glamping?
Sure. If he can meet the setbacks, then yes, he could likely have that approved.
And it sounds like he could put trees around it and get that setback, correct?
Correct.
No, it's not a tree though, it's a minimum of 6 foot height for majority of the length to mitigate potential visual, I guess a tree.
It could be bushes and trees and fence and.
Do you guys want me to pull up a map of them? So you can take a look at it? Yeah. Bear with me here. Sorry, Lauren and board members, I'm trying to not give any additional information, so I'm trying to be cautious. when I
Yes, the
answer
map
these
is in
here.
the record, so you can look at the map, but just be cautious with your questions as they relate to the record only.
It's, looks like, see, here we go. This, I don't know what the color looks like on your screens. It looks terrible here, but
We can see.
this is the property in question here and the structure. So it's a little bit difficult to see because there are a few trees. I believe it's here. Mr. Fuller can probably point this out with his eyes closed even, but here's Creekview Drive.
Where's the access to the property?
It's here.
Oh,
There's a
it's up there.
driveway. There's a driveway that comes in here.
And is everything to the south, is that where the flowers and the,
This area here.
yes, nursery and all of that is taking place?
Yeah, and that should be on the site plan, in the staff report, in the Board of Adjustment staff report.
I don't think we have that.
Yeah, it's difficult to see.
This or this thing.
Yeah.
It looks like this, board members. I apologize. That is what it looked like in the record.
Okay.
It's a black and white rendering of that map.
And so you're saying if it was moved, it would have to go west a little bit to be centered in the property, and then it would meet the standards?
It's too close to the adjacent property to the east and too close to the actual proposed agritourism area here. So if it could be relocated, if they could meet the setbacks are what kept it from being approved or kept staff from recommending approval,
So
as stated in the staff report.
that leads to another question. In, let's see, it's labeled E, I'm not sure. What is it, section 108-21-3, general development standards. Subsection E, general site and building design layout says that it should be concentrated. At meaning, well, let's just read the first sentence or two. It says, an agritourism operation shall have a general design and layout that concentrates all the tourism uses and activities into a distinct activity center. I understand, maybe I understand that incorrect, but if I understand that that should be concentrated near the nursery to keep all of the agritourism in one central location. Am I reading that wrong?
I'm not entirely sure how to address this, Charlie. I'm really trying to be cautious here.
I'll let Lauren say anything that I don't say here, but
Yeah.
the rule of thumb is all the rules apply. And if you can make all of them apply at the same time, there isn't actually a conflict there. So if there is a way to justify or call something as a cluster activity center and still apply the appropriate setback standards, whatever other setback standards and site design standards need to be applied, then none of them are mutually exclusive. They should all be seen as a package.
Okay, and I think the denial was made, I can read this exact, but it's strictly to do with the setback requirements for, and that was setback to the tourism and setback to the adjacent home. I think I read somewhere 110 foot is all there is right now, or something to that effect.
Correct.
Is that to the agritourism or to the adjacent building?
The 110 is to the agritourism area, the 228 is to the adjacent home,
Is that his own home or is that the neighbor's home?
to the adjacent home here on the west.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
all right. And so if he was to move that 250 feet from the adjacent home and had it obscured, then it would meet, is that correct?
it could meet the ordinance that way, yes.
Just for the record, I don't see in the record that it states, that the building is existing, and was not approved, and so that cannot be considered in the record, unless you see that somewhere else, I just wanted to put that on the record.
I agree with you. I don't think the existing building per se is the issue.
Yeah.
I think there was no place on the property determined by the planning commission acceptable based on the setbacks. Is that your take?
So just in their decision, is that what you're asking? What their decision was? Yes, so it seems that the mitigating factors were all satisfied with the exception of those setbacks.
Okay.
Yes.
And we're good with the agritourism, it's just the glamping portion of this that was denied. And so with that, Tammy, do you have anything else that you would like to add at this point?
No.
I think we should invite up our applicant, Mr. I want to say, is it Mr. Fuller?
It is Jason Fuller.
Invite Mr. Fuller up to share his thoughts as to your appeal on this regarding the conditional use permit determination that was made prior. Mr. Fuller, if you'll state your name, address, where you reside.
Jason Fuller, 4661 East Creek View Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's just on the setbacks. If you can see there, and I know it was mentioned, the reason that I had mentioned this during the other meeting was the setbacks. It says there in the code that I'm grandfathered in that the commissioners can waive the setbacks as well as anything else, basically. But I'm mainly concerned with the setbacks. I have a tree farm basically, and there's basically a forest between the home to the east and us, and I have another 50 or 60 trees that are going to be moved this spring that I need to I have a tree spade as well that needs to be moved out, so I can plant additional and or put up a fence as well. But the board actually had, and this is in the in all the minutes there, they have the authority to waive those distances if they see it's not a problem.
I guess my question to you, because this is an appeal of their decision based upon your feeling that they made an error, can you share some light as to where you feel they erred?
Well, I think they spent a lot of time in the meeting and in fact went overtime in debating and going back and forth and a lot of different things. And so in frustration, if you read through the comments and things of the farm actually passed, there was great concern of traffic and the amount of people coming through, and when it boiled down to it, was just the easements, or those, not the easements, but the setbacks. So I don't think enough time was given to go over the setbacks and their responsibility of it, that they had the actual right to waive that. They ran out of time, basically, I think, to look at it, because there's a huge barrier between the home there and
that barrier would have perhaps reduced this 500 to 250, but we still don't have the 250. It does not feel like.
To the home,
To the glamping link.
I'm not exactly sure what it means to when it says the distance between the operation of the farm and the.
So their findings were the proposed glamping, but they did put existing structure cabin not be approved as part of this application, as it doesn't meet the minimum development setback standards. So that was in their finding.
Yeah, and I had mentioned too, and it's in the minutes, there are several, an ADU, bed and breakfast, there are, I think, 4 or 5 different things in the code that I grandfathered in under that allow for overnight stays, and, it's interesting that the glamping now, and I understand glamping could mean tents, and that sounds, that doesn't sound as good. It's a beautiful, small, it was basically converted from a shed, and what's going to be a shed and then a kid's playhouse, and it developed into this. It wasn't ever intended for this. But the larger, there are several, including the bed and breakfast allows for a 7 room structure to be closer in its setbacks to the home around it than it does for this tiny glamping cabin. So that, and then considering the barriers in between them, it's totally not visible from the other places as well. So I just don't agree with it. Seems like they were haphazard in their setbacks for the different structures and the different things that could be allowed on the property.
And so, maybe wrap it for us. Their error was,
I feel like they didn't give it the time to consider. They didn't. There was a lot of debate. They even asked the legality of whether or not they could make the decision to waive the setbacks and things like that. So that was never done. I feel they ran out of time, and also looking at the haphazardness of the setbacks with larger footprints or larger footprints having a closer proximity to the glamping cabin than the one that I currently have.
okay, and I mean, the county's pretty specific on the definition of luxury camping, glamping, and those items are listed under 1 through 5 or A through E. Is there anything else where you feel that the planning commission erred in their decision on your behalf?
Yeah, the agritourism, there was a lot of questioning, and one of them had asked if what this had to do with agritourism, and specifically, as you read there in what's written about agritourism, because farming is a difficult thing to make money with. The glamping and the 5 farm stays were actually put in there to help farmers with the cost of running the farm and to make anything with that. The expenses are extreme on the farm, and just adding to that the necessity, it makes it really nice if we can add to the income of the farm through that.
And just as a note, I mean, they did approve the
Yes,
agritourism aspect of this. It's only the glamping they
right, and it's the glamping that provides a lot of that income. Okay, so yeah.
Anything else you'd like to?
Oh,
say?
I don't know. Gosh, it's been there. I wouldn't. Well, I guess that's not mentioned. Oh, I did mention it in the minutes. I had gone through the commission before, and they had said that we didn't have a meeting, but who I worked with Weber County, who's no longer employed there, said that I needed to have a will serve letter from the water and sewer company in order to do that, and that's what I needed. So I pursued that and spent an additional $10,000 to $15,000 in putting that forward, thinking that was what was going to be necessary to do this, and upon finding out other
You were
things.
told it was a done deal if you got the water.
I was told, yeah, that I needed the water basically, and even since acquiring the water, I've been told that I can't go ahead by the county. I can't. I've met with Tammy a couple times, and oh yes, it looks like you're good there with that, and then not good there with that, and good there with that. And it's been in limbo for the last 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
So I've really done everything possible, and the setbacks are kind of, like I said, with the number of trees, and it states specifically in what those barriers can be. But even without those barriers, the county can pursue other or other logical explanations or things that they can do to help mitigate anything unsightly. And right now, the trees, it's a thrust back there, and I have the ability to create more of that and plant a lot more trees. It's a beautiful area.
Good, thank you. Just one question, how big is your cabin or shed, or how big is this?
I believe that's in there. It's 8 by 15. It was actually, and I mentioned this before, it was brought in as a shed piece by piece. Then I was gonna have a grand, and the reason the location it's in is I put it in front of the solar panels, which I have. I put it there as a shed at first to block the view of that from our home, and it developed into what I thought would be a kid's playhouse. And then as I kind of worked with that, I thought, wow, this is a really neat little place. So it kind of went out from there. So technically there was no building permit required or anything of the shed that Troy was putting in.
Because it was less than 200 square feet.
A lot less, yeah. So,
Okay, appreciate it. Okay, is there a motion by the board, we will adjourn?
I just have a question for legal. It was mentioned that the commissioners have the authority to waive the setbacks. Can you explain that? Can they waive it to any arbitrary number, or is it waive it from the 300 and the 500 down to half of that to 150 and 250?
So I'm reading the minutes right now where that's referenced, and I'm actually looking at the book right now to better answer that question, so give me just a minute to read that.
So on these, we just need a motion in a second. Adjourn for deliberation once Lauren finishes. And then we'll go back with this. For this, there's no way to communicate with us. And we'll go back to the. So then. So. Some of you. Page. This thing. This one, here, based on acres. So you've got your farm sites, so this one here is the only one that's applicable. This one. Sorry.
We'll have one more question for legal.
You can go ahead with that question while I read this, sorry.
All right, I am trying to understand the difference between luxury camping cabin and accessory dwelling unit. They both allow overnight stay, and meals will be served to shall only be served to overnight guests. They say the same. So, but one is not allowed because they don't have the acreage, the other is. But what is the difference between the two buildings?
So actually, I think in this case where it was only looking for glamping, we don't even wanna really go there with that question, just to focus on the glamping as it relates to the record.
Because it was Houses are, that's what we're.
Okay. But what is I mean, would this shed fit as a glamping cabin? I guess that's what I want to know. Is would it be, I mean, it says tents or cabins. Would the size, would it be acceptable if it was in the right location, just out of curiosity?
My understanding, if I can answer the question, is that the building would be allowed to be a glamping cabin, assuming it's in the right location or there's no acreage, so forth.
Okay.
There's not huge definition on what a glamping cabin or tent is, so there's quite a bit of latitude. When there's latitude, we usually air that interpretation in favor of the landowner. Yes.
Are you still looking up something?
Yeah, so sorry, it's in the old code, so I just wanted to make sure I looked at it. So in the old code, it does say, and you have this code to look at as well, it's in 108.21.6. It states that the uses listed below are subject to additional standards beyond any provided within other codes, and one or more of the additional standards may be waived by the planning commission upon finding that either a proposed use proposes no detrimental effects to neighboring properties due to unique circumstances, or it can be mitigated to an acceptable level due to the imposition of other or appropriate site-specific conditions that justify the use. So it is true the planning commission can waive some things, but what I think is important to remember in this situation is you, as the appeal authority, you are simply reviewing the correctness of the legal decision that they chose to make. So it's true the planning commission does have some discretion to do that, but remember, as the appeal authority, it's about correctness as it related to the legal standard that they applied.
That they determined.
Correct, yeah.
Thanks, Lauren. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn for the deliberation?
I make a motion that we adjourn for deliberation.
Okay.
Okay,
And you have to vote.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll adjourn for a few minutes, and Lauren, if you'll join us with legal. Is back in order. Do we have to redo anything?
You need to make a motion to reopen.
Motion to reopen the meeting. Motion?
I'll make a motion to reopen the meeting.
Second.
Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We have, after deliberating quite extensively, we have made the decision to our decisions under advisement. I'm trying to read without my glasses on. And then we'll issue a written statement back to you shortly. I don't have an exact time frame because they've got to get it to the three of us, but shortly, hopefully very soon. And that's our decision for this evening. So is there anything else, Charlie, for tonight from your perspective?
Nothing from me, good job. Appeals aren't always easy, so good job.
Okay, thank you. Lauren, anything else on your side? All right, motion to adjourn.
That a motion? No, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.